This is Cate Swannell for the MJA. Today we're speaking with MJA Editor-in-Chief Stephen Leeder about our first issue of the year on the 19th of January. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Kate.
What do you think? It's a whole new look for us, isn't it?
Yes, we're moving to a different design. I think it's more open and simpler and more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
It's a response to what our readers told us they wanted.
Yep.
So if they don't like it, they better tell us again.
I'm sure they will.
Let's hope.
Now, you tackle a pretty interesting subject, a controversial subject in some ways in this issue, the subject of death and dying and Australians wanting to die at home but not doing it very often.
Yes, it's true. Well, I mean, none of us do it all that often, but I mean, no, your point's well made, because about 70% of Australians say that they would prefer to die at home if they had to die. That's a high figure, and of course it's a figure that built on a lot of ignorance, because not many of us know actually what goes into the dying process, and people who set out to die at home sometimes strike a crisis. And one of the problems we have with dying at home is that the support for people to do that in a crisis. Yes.
Because that's often when people end up in emergency departments.
Exactly. So, where do you go? Go to hospital. So, in fact, the figures are 70% wanting to do so, 17% actually doing so. And there's a very good article by Stephen Duckett and Hal Sverrisson from the Grattan Institute that very thoughtfully reviews what would be needed to improve that figure up to about 30%, which is the figure that applies in places like Canada, with whom we have a lot in common. Not cheap. I mean, this is not, if you're in the business of cost cutting and not concerned about quality, you wouldn't choose this, because it's probably on balance a little more expensive. Because you've got to provide the community support.
Right.
We don't have to, but people living alone or older people who are at the edge of economic insecurity, things of that sort. These are people who really require help and support, and you can't just say, just look after this relative while you're out of it.
By support, you mean getting through that crisis without needing to go to hospital? Getting
through the crisis and managing the day-to-day mundane stuff. And one element in that is that it costs $1.
Yeah. But wouldn't it save $1, not going to hospital?
Yes, it would, but the figures that Stephen and Hal put forward suggest that if you're going to achieve the goal of, say, doubling the number of people who die at home rather than the current figure, it would cost money.
Yeah.
Even though theoretically you could save it in nursing home fees and hospital fees. But trying to save money in this context is very tricky, because every time you don't occupy a bed with someone else, you turn around and then there's another person in the bed.
Yeah.
So I don't see the matter of cost saving as highly relevant to this. But one of the other articles in there is one I've written. It's a kind of a book review of Adol Gawanda, who's a Harvard young, I can say that, he's young, he's only 50, I can say it, who's written about the subject of being mortal. And his thesis that he's putting forward is that, based on his own encounters with lots of patients, is that it's very important to find out what they want to do. Especially when they're getting to the limits of what medical technology can provide.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like the Sverrisson-Duckett article, but it comes from a North American perspective. But he writes brilliantly, and his case histories are just dazzling.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Kate.